For all the propaganda of the Enlightenment, which succeeded in largely discrediting Christianity and religion in general, no attack has been as devastating as that of Darwinism. However, despite popular misconceptions, Darwinism is still an unproven theory. Rather, Darwinism is fundamentally a religious idea, and an attempt to demonstrate scientifically that the universe conforms to the Luranic Kabbalah, where man is evolving to become God. According to Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, from 1865 to 1935, the most important exponent of religious Zionism, evolution is, quote, increasingly conquering the world at this time, and, more so than all other philosophical theories, conforms to the Kabbalistic secrets of the world, end quote. The idea also contributed to the development of Darwin's theory of evolution. More devastatingly still, however, was the cynical conclusions of social Darwinism that were derived from the idea of the, quote, survival of the fittest. Together, these would form the driving concepts behind the rise of fascism. Despite the fact that social Darwinism bears Darwin's name, it is also linked together with others, notably Herbert Spencer, Thomas Malthus, and Francis Galton. Darwin's grandfather Erasmus Darwin was a Freemason and a member of the Lunar Society, with Francis Galton's grandfather, Samuel Galton Jr. The Lunar Society included a number of men linked to Freemasonry. The society, or lunatics, as they liked to call themselves, as they so named because the society would meet during the full moon, began with a group of friends that included Erasmus Darwin, Matthew Boulton, Benjamin Franklin, and Joseph Priestley. The name of the Lunar Society changed significantly with the move to Birmingham in 1765 of the Scottish physician William Small, who had been Professor of Natural Philosophy at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, where he had taught and been a major influence over Thomas Jefferson. Small's arrival with a letter of introduction to Matthew Boulton from Benjamin Franklin had a galvanizing effect on the circle, which then actively started to attract new members. Eugenics begins with Darwin's cousin Francis Galton. The Darwin and Galton families also boasted fellows of the Royal Society. Galton coined the term eugenics in 1882 to mean well-born. Galton thought that the social positions achieved by Britain's ruling elite were determined by their superior biological disposition. Thomas Malthus's father was an intimate friend of French philosopher and Freemason Rousseau. Malthus, as laid out in his 1798 work, An Essay on the Principle of Population, written in response to William Godwin, describes how unchecked population growth is exponential and would therefore eventually outstrip the food supply, whose growth was arithmetical. The survival of the fittest is a term coined by sociologist Herbert Spencer, derived from his reading of Malthus. However, Spencer's major work, called Progress, Its Law and Cause, written in 1857, was released 2 years before the publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species, and First Principles was printed in 1860. Spencer supported laissez-faire capitalism on the basis of his belief that struggle for survival spurred self-improvement which could be inherited. In the book The Social Organism, written in 1860, Spencer compares society to a living organism and argues that, just as biological organisms evolve through natural selection, society evolves and increases in complexity through analogous processes. The publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species helped to create the false impression of a conflict between science and religion, as it brought on a storm of controversy between the scientific establishment and the Church of England, who recognized evolutionism as an attack on what was perceived as the divinely ordained aristocratic social order. Conversely, Darwin's ideas on evolution were welcomed by liberal theologians and by a new generation of salaried professional scientists, who would later come to form the X Club, who saw his work as a great stride in the struggle for freedom and clerical interference in science. This attack was led by Thomas Henry Huxley, known as Darwin's bulldog, grandfather of Aldous and Julian Huxley. Huxley was a long-standing member of the Royal Society, eventually serving as its president. A noted unbeliever, Thomas Huxley used the term, quote, agnostic to describe his attitude to theism. Huxley applied Darwin's ideas to humans, using paleontology and comparative anatomy as purported evidence that humans and apes shared a common ancestry. Huxley's legendary retort that he would rather be descended from an ape than a man who misused his gifts came to symbolize the supposed triumph of science over religion. For about 30 years, Huxley was not only evolution's most influential proponent, but has been described as the, quote, premier advocate of science in the 19th century for the whole English-speaking world, end quote. On November 3rd, 1864, the day that lobbying accorded Britain's highest scientific honour, the Royal Society's Copley Medal, Huxley held the first meeting of what became the influential X Club. All 9 founding members belonged to the Royal Society except Herbert Spencer. The X Club were united by a, quote, devotion to science, pure and free, untrampled by religious dogmas. According to Ruth Burton, quote, they were representatives of expert professional science to the end of the century, becoming leading advisors to government and leading publicists for the benefits of science. They became influential in scientific politics, forming interlocking directorships on the councils of many scientific societies.